On this episode of Team Building Saves the World.
Effectively, you have to be able to support and create a lifestyle for your employees, and that is truly your differentiator as an employer brand. This concept that you just provide health insurance and dental and vision, and then you're done.
Right.
That doesn't work anymore.
On a serious note, though, to interrupt you, Alexa, I think this year is the year also of mental health.
I was just telling Saul this morning, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Alexa, eat this. I don't want it. Eat it now. Trust me, you're going to fall over.
Hello, team. Once again, it's me, your old friend Rich Riddensland, host of Team Building Saves the World, the show where I speak to the leaders and innovators of the team building industry from all across the globe, trying to find out what about that industry is so important, especially in the world of today. And today we are celebrating wellness with Perks, Director of Benefit Development and the CEO and co-founder of Perks. Perks is the nation's leading employee experience and office innovation showcase for employers to find innovative and employee-centric services. But first, I need to send my thanks out to my supporters at Team Bonding. If your team is ready to experience teamwork through the power of play, then visit teambonding.com to learn more. And now, my friends, join me in welcoming the Director of Business Development at Perks Convention, Saul Lookner, and CEO and co-founder of Perks, Alexa Baggio. That is just a small group of people I keep chained up under my desk. They're here just to applaud you guys. That's their entire job. How you guys doing today?
It's a good start.
Thank you. Thanks.
You got a good crowd stuffed under there.
Thanks for coming on and joining us, guys. So
happy to be here.
To start, let's start with you, Saul. What is Perks, and how did you get involved in it?
I told Alexa that Perks would never work when she told me what it really was. So that was my whole claim to fame.
Okay.
He's actually not wrong about that.
Well, then, Alexa, go ahead. Why don't you start off? Tell us about what Perks is, because I know
sure.
you're the brainchild of it. So,
for better or for worse, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we, I'm the founder and CEO of Perks. We are the employee experience company, and we have under our sort of umbrella or purview here, we have three different brands that we have created and are the proud creators and curators of. The first is the Employee Experience Expo. So that is a trade show that we host in 6 cities around North America: Boston, New York, LA, Chicago, San Francisco, and Toronto. And the goal of our trade shows is to show the employer community in that city all the great, innovative, and cool benefits they can provide to their teams. So that's our first brand. Our second brand is called POPS. It's the People Ops Society, which is a exclusive community for people ops professionals to basically meet, share resources, take courses, and just kind of have a place for, themselves to talk to themselves, for the people by the people, as we say. And then our last brand is called Showcase, which is the employee experience platform. I don't know if you're sensing a theme here, Rich, but the employee experience platform is basically both an app and a web platform that allows employers to, what we say is basically solve the employee awareness problem. So make their employees more aware of what their benefits are. Alarming statistic, 59% of employees cannot remember the benefits that they enrolled in the last open enrollment, and over 80% do not know all of the benefits that their employer offers to them, which is alarming because we work with the people who choose all those things and do the hard work to make sure they have the right benefits and the right perks and the right services and the right lifestyle. So our software is sort of basically designed to help solve that problem and put your employee experience in your employee pocket. So that's Perks. That's who we are. Saul is sort of the heart and soul of our team over at PerksCon, and as well as he works with our broker partners at Showcase. So
fantastic. Well, let's start off at the very beginning. Where did this all come from, Alexa?
Oh, good God. Many, many moons ago, 2014, 2015, something like that. Okay. I was the co-founder of a business called 2020 On-Site that does on-site eye exams at the office, which is like it's a foreign concept these days, but they're coming back around. And the whole idea was preventative healthcare, right? So this idea that, some of these services like eye exams, they're preventative, but it's very easy to fall by the wayside. You tend to have some sort of coverage through your employer, but getting to the eye doctor is actually more complicated than it sounds, and thus people don't do it. And it can detect things like heart disease and cholesterol issues and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
So it is good preventative healthcare. So anyway, we built the business to be a free to employer, paid for by employee benefit. So we would build these awesome 34 to 38-foot RVs decked out to be like this awesome, sort of futuristic eye doctor and eye store, sort of, optical store on wheels. And we were going to the employer community. And one of the things I learned when I was starting that business was that there didn't seem to be a place where employers could come to find services like 2020 or find services like, a lean box or a team bonding. There were things that were existing in the world that were very traditional HR trade shows built around this idea of continuing education, right? SHRM and NERA and all the groups that do sort of the educational and compliance content in the space. But there was not anybody that was like, hey, there's a lot of fun stuff you could do for your team too. That's not just health insurance. Come spend the day with us and we'll make sure you know about all of them. So we tested the idea in whatever that year was, 2014, 2015 in Boston. We had like a little tiny trade show at the Microsoft Nerd Center, which no longer exists, sadly. It was a cool space. And we had something like 20 or 25 different vendors, everything from food to, massages at work to, kind of all the things we used to think of when we think of the Googleization of the workforce or the workplace. It was very food heavy, foosball tables, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But that was many years ago. And we had like 400 or 500 people show up to our first event, and we were just blown away. We were like, okay, people actually really do want to do this stuff for their teams, and they're really struggling to find a sort of central location to see what's innovative and see what's out there. And so our criteria was originally, and basically still is, that in order to be involved in the Employee Experience Expo, you have to directly benefit the employee experience. So we don't showcase anything that the employee cannot experience, touch, feel, look at, go to, subscribe for, that they don't then give credit back to their employer. So we don't showcase anything that's like HRIS softwares or, anything that's kind of behind the scenes. Everything that we're focused on is, from electric car charging stations to telemedicine and, healthcare reduction and online events and all kinds of engagement stuff. So it's been a fun journey, but yeah, that's where this came from. And then from there, we've just sort of grown and into working with the employer community. And we started to get some feedback that as people operations professionals, they wanted a new community to talk about sort of people operations as a separate lens from sort of traditional HR. And so we started that group right before the pandemic and have been lucky enough to grow that over the last year. And then Showcase was born out of that because last year, a little before a year from now, we started to hear employers as well as their benefit providers just go, what am I going to do this year? I can't be on site at a virtual benefit fair or an on-site benefit fair. How do I do this virtually? And we said, well, we think we can help with that because we know this area really well. And this is what we do all year, is connect brands with employers and employees with brands. So here we are, Rich.
Saul, obvious question. Why didn't you think this would work?
It's a great question. My thought was, I had been to other exhibits and conventions like that. Basically, as far as I had seen as an exhibitor, HR didn't really want to talk to you, or no one really went to conferences to talk to the exhibitors. They almost went to avoid the exhibitors. So when Alexa had the idea and saying, hey, people do want this stuff, they will come. And I said, well, they probably don't want to leave their offices to talk to the exhibitors. And I was wrong. I joked with her about this. Now the litmus test is, if I think it's not a good idea, we just go ahead and do it.
It's literally like a North Star for us. Like if Saul thinks it won't work, we're going to do it.
No.
So far it's worked pretty well, but we'll see.
Let's talk about the employee engagement, because when I was reading through your bios on LinkedIn and on your website, I was struck by the modernizing the workplace improvement and employee experience. What do you mean when you say that? I mean, what does the modernizing of it look like?
So back to sort of the Googleization of the workforce, right? A bunch of this stuff and all the innovative benefits and stuff around team bonding and culture, it all came out of this concept of like, okay, highly competitive tech-based employers, largely out of San Francisco to start, are pouring money into these resources that are highly visible to potential candidates, right? Things like, I think it was like Google had babysitting and laundry services on campus and people like lost their minds. And what we saw for a while was people try to like, okay, let's follow that rabbit down that hole, right? We're gonna add all these on-site services. We're gonna have, all these sort of like tangible things. We're gonna have kegerators, and that kind of became the norm for like a quote unquote, like the bellwether of your culture. And the reality is that that's actually not what is driving the cultural change. What is driving the cultural change is, especially millennials, are the largest generation of the workforce right now. I am a millennial, so I can talk about it. They've come to sort of, we've transitioned away from like these cute things that are novel, attracting talent and keeping talent, to this idea of effectively you have to be able to support and create a lifestyle for your employees. And that is truly your differentiator as an employer brand. So if it used to be that, 30, 40 years ago, like if you had healthcare and dental and vision and a 401k, like you were at the top of cream of the crop as an employer, right? Because, that was where we were at 30 or 40 years ago.
Right.
Now it's become this kind of test for how many services and what's the right combination of services that actually creates the culture and the brand you are trying to instill. Because what I can tell you, and what I know Saul can attest to, is we speak to every year hundreds of new companies that are trying to create services, products, subscriptions, technology, whatever it is, with the lens of the employee in mind, which did not exist 10 years ago, right? Like when we started the Perks conventions, before we had any of this going, that was a fairly novel concept. It's why we were so surprised when so many people came to our first event, because we were like, oh, you are interested in this. And so this concept, I think, has transitioned away from novelty into more expectation. So the millennial generation has come to expect some of these things. And so now what that means in an increasingly digital world is that you need to align your experience explicitly with what you want to promote as an employer and what you are expecting your employee lifestyle to look like. When I am sitting in front of a computer, staring at a bunch of squares all day, doing my marketing work in my Google Sheets, or, recording my podcast on Zoom, or whatever it is, in my day-to-day experience, in this example, I'm the employee that is actually differentiating my employer experience. Right? It's just my butt in a seat in front of Zoom and the work that I do on a regular basis, right? And obviously the people I do it for, but you're never going to replace the people you work for. So I think the whole world has shifted from sort of this idea of like, oh, what's the fun stuff I can say my employer does, to like, what is the lifestyle that my employer affords me and supports me in? And that's a much more intentional way to build a team, to build a culture, to build benefits, to build, any of those things. And I think that the pandemic effectively just catapulted us into that philosophy, which is like, it is no longer about butts in seats and dry gray cubicles. And, none of that stuff is going to fly anymore if you want to be competitive, but it's also not ever going to go back to like, oh, well, we have a foosball table and a kegerator, right? Those things were just, they were
sugar cookies. They were
exactly.
floss.
Exactly. They were fun. They were like, hey, look at us, we're cool. But now, like, Glassdoor is not going anywhere. Every employer, worth any salt has information about their brand, their culture, their team, sort of all over the internet all the time. And now we're in a world where you have to be very intentional about what are the things that you're signaling to your team in the benefits and the experiences that you're providing, and where are you getting engagement, right? This concept that like you just provide health insurance and dental and vision and then like you're done.
Right.
That doesn't work anymore, right? You have to be not only aware of what your team wants based on sort of who they are and what you want them to be into, right? Maybe it's fitness, maybe it's, family time, maybe it's whatever. That's for each employer to decide, but you can't ever kind of put the cat back in the bag on this. And so it means we have to be more and more intentional and actually design these experiences, not just slap a bunch of stuff that's like cheap and free and in the budget and like hope people engage with it, right? You have to be able to not only test and measure what people engage with, you have to be willing to change what people engage with as your team changes. So there's kind of this philosophical shift from like nice to have to need to have, and from kind of like more is better to more intentional is better.
I also think too, whereas Perks started off with the name Perks, now there's not really a line. I think people, it's sort of like it's all one bucket.
It's all the employee experience.
So.
Excellent.
Yeah, people used to differentiate between benefits and perks, and now it's like, does it affect the employer or doesn't it? Does it contribute to your employer brand or doesn't it? It's all the same. And I would argue that a lot of the quote unquote core benefits, to use industry language, they don't differentiate at all anymore, right? Unless you're someone with a pre-existing condition or a sick loved one or a certain set of circumstances you need to be cautious of or aware of in switching employers, healthcare is a given. And you only get usually two choices. And if you're lucky, one of them's a PPO, right?
Right.
It's no longer a differentiator. So you've got to go further down the stack. And that starts to become, what does my lifestyle look like when I'm here with this brand? And what do they encourage of me and signal to me is okay based on the experiences, the interactions, the benefits that they afford me?
That all sounds amazing. With that in mind, I actually do want to take a second here, guys. I need to step away just for a brief moment because I want to take a second to tell my team about a company I am very proud to be a part of, Team Bonding. Team Bonding was founded over 20 years ago with one simple question: how can employees have a great time while fostering strong, authentic bonds between people who work together? They've created a catalog of innovative events using the power of play as a learning tool and tapping into the correlation of work and play. From scavenger hunts to Jeopardy and so much more, the team bonding activities, live, virtual, and hybrid, maximizes the impact of team building with an accent on fun. Visit teambonding.com to schedule your event now. Team Bonding, when you want seriously fun results. And I know for a fact Team Bonding has been so excited to be part of the Perk conferences. Like everywhere you guys go, we're there with you.
Yeah, we love it. You guys are a fun partner. And look, we're big believers. We always joke, if you can't have fun at a Perks convention, like you're not going to have any fun doing this in general for a living. So you might want to rethink your profession. I mean, we hand you champagne when you walk in the door. There's a DJ that spins all day. There's all kinds of fun stuff happening at these events to give people a place for a day to come think and dream and use their imaginations for what they want to create for their teams, and then take some of those ideas back to their group and figure out what works.
Is it also, go ahead, Saul.
Regarding team bonding too, you've always done very well at our shows, but I mean, with the pandemic and everything being hybrid,
right.
Last year people could not, they're almost like breaking through the screen to try to find you and get a contact person. So it was really wonderful to see. Yeah, a lot of bad stuff happened during the pandemic, but some of the silver linings there were for groups like yours, that the need was really, really, really there, and still is, obviously, people being hybrid and stuff like that. So
right. No, I was going to say, talking about, let's look back at that. What was it like for you guys to go from live events all across the country to suddenly people can't be closer than 6 feet from each other?
Yeah. So
is dead air a good way to say it?
Actually,
a couple days of soul searching. Yes.
It's like that moment in like the cheesy medical shows where like the green line that is the heartbeat just kind of goes flat for a minute, and you're like, are they going to resuscitate? No. So look, as a business owner, it was survival mode, right? It was like, all right, this is, our world has changed. The medium we use to communicate this message has been cut off from us. But I don't think we ever lost sight of the vision that, like, we like to joke as a team now, like, if you weren't thinking about your employee experience before, you better be now, because it's only gotten harder as people have gotten more dispersed, right? And I will say, preface this entire comment with, we're a remote team. We're a small team, so we've always had the luxury of being able to be remote and do pretty well for ourselves. But I have always been a huge believer in remote teams. I think the amount of autonomy and just ownership it creates for teams, at certain sizes for certain roles, is like a really positive thing. And people used to be like, how do you work from home? That's crazy. I could never do that. Like, I could never, sit in my pajamas all day and, do those things. The answer is like, you probably shouldn't sit in your pajamas all day. That doesn't usually make a productive day. But
right.
It was actually kind of, in a way, making our point to watch the whole world first and foremost do this, but also then look at things like open enrollment and the events they used to do and all these different things they used to put so much emphasis on, and go, wait a minute, we have to be more thoughtful here, and we have to do this differently. And there are so many organizations that were just sort of forced to re-look at their experience and forced to rethink how they communicate to their teams. And for us, like, that's all we've ever wanted. Everything we've ever built is around sort of, making HR lives easier and cooler and better, and making employee experiences better. And so for people who would never have changed the status quo ever before, to sit back and go, I think we have to, like, actually think about this now. Like, we can't just be medical, dental, vision. We have to be thoughtful, and we have to do things to engage our team. I mean, one of the biggest questions we got at the beginning of the pandemic is like, what do I do to keep my team engaged? And then, a year later, the conversation was like, how many more Zoom events can I do? Like, I'm running out of ideas here, which I'm sure you guys know all about. But it was a fascinating transition to see just who went like, all right, we got to ante up here and get in the ring and figure this out. And I think those employers are probably thriving right now.
But now you're going back to live. Will there be a hybrid, or are you just going forget virtual anymore? Let's go straight back to everybody in a convention center.
Yeah, so our core events are going to go back to in-person. There is just something magical about meeting people face-to-face and understanding what they want, and you are never going to get that engagement online for our event, right? You guys run very different events. You're experts at online engagement, so I can't speak to that. But when you come to a trade show like ours, you are coming to both explore and discover services that you maybe wouldn't have known about or interacted with before, and you're getting some education from the stage a little bit around employee experience design and data for all those things. But you're really coming to get a vibe for what fits for you and your team. And that's pretty hard to reproduce in a virtual event. We did very well with our virtual events last year. We were very lucky to be supported by some of the groups and sponsors that we were, and we had overwhelmingly positive response to virtual events. Good. But planning a virtual event is like planning a TV show for a day. It's very different than how do I get humans to walk around each other, talk to each other, engage on certain subjects. So for us, I think at least in our core cities, in-person is definitely the way to go. Yeah, with that said, we've always, Rich, known that there are going to be places that we cannot host a full Perks convention. Sure. It does not behoove us, for lots of reasons, namely cost, to host some of these events at the scale that we do in smaller cities, right? Like we're probably not going to have, a Perks convention in Santa Fe, New Mexico, right? Okay. But there are employers there and they need services and they want to discover things. So we've always long thought about maybe some sort of virtual convention anyway for the markets where our Perks and providers service additional employers outside of the 6 major metropolitan areas we're in. So this has really forced us to think, okay, what were the great parts about the virtual event that we want to keep? And when we go back to in-person, or IRL as I call it in real life, what elements of that should we be keeping? And how do we mix those in such that it is kind of like a 1-2 punch, right? Because when you're at, Boston PerksCon, that you can be confident in that room that every provider that is there services employers in Boston. Right. Nice. There's no geographic restrictions. That's a little different when you go online because in theory, you're at least a national provider, if not a global provider, but maybe there's different constraints. So it's something to think about. And, we also have our showcase software, which is designed to show off providers to groups of people. So we're hoping to work that in and do something fun with hybrid this year, but we miss in-person. We love in-person.
Speaking of your providers, Saul, what's some of your favorite items that have been put forth?
I mean, so I obviously love all of them, to be very political on that one. But I would say...
But team bonding's your favorite. We know. Go ahead. It's fine.
I am always a big fan of massage. So Alexa will joke about the day of our shows, I'm the one who's making sure all of our team eats. I also host Thanksgiving in my spare time, right? So Alexa, eat this. I don't want it. Eat it now. Trust me, you're going to follow it. Yeah, I mean, all the food Perks are fantastic. They often, where they can, they'll bring in samples, and that's amazing. I also love massage. I mean, I love massage. So, towards the end of the day, maybe I'll sneak onto one of those chairs when I'm there. But, we have things like robots that make tea. We have amazing on-site coffee vendors. We have a lot of mindfulness vendors who are fantastic. I've learned a lot from everybody. Listen, it's going to sound crazy, but the fact that I know a lot about or know enough to be deadly with HSAs, health savings accounts, is because of the awesome HSA vendors we have there. So it's just, different strokes for different folks. I love all of them.
It's all deadly, I think is what he's saying, Rich.
What about you, Alexa? Any favorites?
I don't play favorites. I refuse to. But
anything that stands out in your mind then?
Yeah, look, we have seen people in the last 7 years of doing this, Rich. Every year I go, Saul, this is where the buck stops. Like people cannot come up with one more service for the employer market. And every single year I am wrong. And so, if 2 years ago, the hottest thing on the market was financial wellness and financial education, I think this year it's probably going to be something like hybrid engagement solutions. Right. So things like team bonding, it's going to be Thriver, like all the like, how do I keep teams that are dispersed engaged? And I think that's the way the universe should be going, to be fair. So I'm down with that fad.
On a serious note, though, to interrupt you, Alexa, I think this year is the year also of mental health.
Yes, for sure.
And everything surrounding it, right? Excellent. So that could be mindfulness meditation for people, or it could be the other side of it. I need a mental health counselor now, and everything that cascades with it. So there's just so many issues with that it's huge.
Yeah, and we just partnered with
Here.
BetterHelp on some of our shows, who we're really excited to work with. There's actually been this really fascinating trend, Rich, that's fun to see over the last couple of years of really large consumer brands getting involved in the employer space. And there's lots of reasons I think that is, and I think it's actually a really positive trend for a lot of reasons. But there are some really cool opportunities for employers to bring, again, sort of thoughtful solutions and inexpensive solutions to their teams that give them a lot of power as an employer from a brand perspective. So something like BetterHelp, which basically everybody's heard of, or Calm, all these guys have, they now have employer solutions. Uber for business, DoorDash for at work. There's all these huge groups that have the reason that's positive is not only is it bringing things like mental health to light, making it more accessible, and also showing, I think the really important thing about the mental health piece there is that you are, as an employer, showing your employees it is okay to access mental health services, and you're not admitting that you're not okay by using the service, and that's why it's awesome, right? It's like my employer is telling me it's okay to take care of myself. But the trend, I think, is really positive because it allows this lifestyle creation, right? Which I sort of started this conversation with, which is it allows the employer to craft an experience to the employee in an inexpensive way, sort of with services they can access really easily that are built for good engagement, and to do that as an employer brand. And that is something that is like a total paradigm shift. I mean, we couldn't do that 5 years ago.
And we've seen some of our groups like, Fringe, right? Where people, can make these choices, or we've seen Journey Meditation go to be Journey. And now that they are in some of the mental health space too, as well, but they're not competing with BetterHelp. They're almost augmenting it. It's a lot of really interesting progression for how each groups are handling everything. So we're just like, it's fun to watch it. In some ways, and this is I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. I'm obviously not the parent there, but I get to watch the brands grow up. So it's like best of both worlds. I don't have to parent them; they can do that their own. But I can watch them from afar grow up, and it's close.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up because, like, in the marketplace now, in corporate culture, I mean, how many different generations of people are now working for a living?
4, almost 5.
Right. So, how do you make sure that there's something for everybody?
It's a phenomenal question. So I actually think making sure there's something for everyone is maybe the easier piece of this problem to solve.
Okay.
Right? Because if you look across the generations, we actually have a very cool infographic that talks about this, but if you look across the 4 generations and you go like, okay, at this moment in time, where are millennials, right? Like most millennials are somewhere between getting married, buying a house, and like maybe starting to worry about aging parent issues, right? So boomers are definitely worrying about aging parents, and whatever's behind millennials, Gen Zers, the kids that are on their phone all day, the first digitally native generation, they're like, get me back to an office because I want to meet my coworkers and, have parties and do some, kind of the crazy interaction stuff that happens when you're like young in your career, right? And so if you're looking at the Gen Zers, you're like, all right, we should have, Drizzly at work. We should have some of these great food benefits set up. We should be making sure that we're doing on-site, in-person, very intentional events when we bring people back to the office. If you look at the millennials, you're like, we should be probably providing some sort of financial education benefit. We should be probably have some sort of aging parent, something. Like you can actually, the beautiful thing about where we're at today, Rich, is all of those services exist. There's almost nothing an employer has ever asked us to find for them that doesn't exist as a product that they can offer to their teams. So that's not the harder thing to solve. I think the harder thing to solve is how do we break down this idea of A, it is hard to do that, and B, that utilization is going to be really low, so it's not worth it. And those are 2 pieces of like the employer brand and the employee experience stigma I think we just absolutely have to get rid of, because first of all, it's not hard. Like groups like us exist explicitly to make it not hard for you to do this stuff for your team. There's nothing we love more than helping people pick the right perks and benefits and providers to work with. Right. We do it all the time for groups, but also it doesn't have to be expensive. But this idea that like, if my whole team can't use it, or I don't get 75% engagement with this thing, why would I do it? And it's like, well, let me reverse the question, right? Yeah. If you could get 10 of your team members an eye exam at the office instead of 0, would that be worth doing it? And the answer is almost always yes. But when you have 4 generations of people in the workforce, right, and you're offering this sort of like smattering of things across the generations, you are never going to be able to hit a home run every time.
Sure.
So we have to get employers, as they're designing their brands, to understand what you're trying to do is optimize for each person where they're at. you are not trying to optimize the total package, because you can't. You're going to have certain things. You're going to have certain things that half of your population is like, I'm not interested in, like fertility benefits, right? Like, you're never going to have a fertility benefit that has 100% utilization. That would be crazy for lots of reasons. But like, you're also never going to have a physical fitness benefit or a wellness benefit that pertains to everybody, because everybody is at a different place in their physical fitness benefit in their journey, their health journey. So you may have a really intense fitness offering that 10% of your population uses, and you should be stoked about that as long as you're not paying for the other 90%.
Right.
And you may have, a meditation app that gets used by 60% of people, and that's also awesome, because it's accessible, it's easy, it's daily, it's theirs. So I think there's the harder part of accessing this conversation, Rich, is, I was just telling Saul this morning, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And we have to get people to understand that when you're dealing with this many people and this many generations and this many expectations, you cannot be everything to everyone. You have to pick the things that are going to cover your population, and then you have to tailor them to what you as the employer actually want to promote, right? So if you want to tell your team, we really care about lifestyle and balance and mental health and wellness, like those are the things we are going to actively promote to you as a brand, as your employer, then you need to follow that, right? If you're like, well, we want you guys to worry about your own health and your own this, but we care about making sure that the office is a really engaging place, then you're going to build benefits and systems around that. So I think it gets sort of blown into this, like, unfortunately, larger conversation than it is. And the reason we're excited is that, like, this is what we're here to do. The world is here. The days of it being hard to build a great employee experience are over. That I can say confidently.
Nice. The conventions just for employers or employees as well?
We welcome anyone who is an employee if they want to attend. Largely the people that attend are employers, so anyone who is involved in buying for the employee experience effectively. So that's usually HR or culture or people or benefits from, CHRO. Sometimes we get CEOs, sometimes we get COOs, and then also the broker community. So we have lots of awesome partners in the Mercers and the NFPs and the Lockdowns, et cetera, of the world, who make it a point to make sure that their clients are there so that they're also aware of what they can offer. And so we obviously welcome the broker community with open arms, because they sometimes are sort of the perfect liaison between maybe all the pressure the employer is feeling from a benefits perspective and the marketplace. And like I said, the marketplace has not gotten smaller in the last 5 to 10 years. It has exponentially grown to it would be almost impossible to keep up with all the services that we talk to, although we're trying. Every year we put out a big book of perks, which is 100 perks and services you need to know about going into that year. And every year, Rich, we cut out, like, I don't know, at least 40 of them, just because it's like some categories gotten really hot, and it's always changing, which is awesome. It just makes it hard to sort of always stay on top of.
Sounds like you just need more conventions.
Yeah,
Clearly.
careful what you wish for, Rich.
Rich, she's way ahead of you. Don't worry about it.
Saul, what are you looking most forward to for going back to live events?
I mean, all of it. It's a rush in live events. The people who are there. The happy hour is also wonderful. But when you work, we're a really highly functional team at Perks. Alexa's a fantastic leader, right? She has the ability to get you to see what she's seeing, so you can act like you think she would, and she trusts you to act. So in that way, we all function autonomously, but we're all functioning as a team. And I love working in that aspect of it. We're a fun show. We're not stodgy, right? It's a one-day event. So we're flying in on a Tuesday. The show's on a Thursday. We're out Friday morning. And in between, there's a lot of fun work and a lot of interaction. It's a rush. So that's what
we definitely get our steps in. That's for sure.
100%.
Alexa, same question. What are you looking forward to most?
I am looking forward to... So the best part about our events, Rich, is at the end of the day, when the people who are like a little shy to walk in, and a little stressed out and worried about all these things, come out at the end of the day, usually had a drink or two, although not always, and they just look invigorated. They're just like, this was fun. I thought about things I don't get to take a minute to think about. I'm excited to go talk to my team about some stuff and some things I want to do for our people, right? And that is literally what the show exists for, is like to give employers imagination around what they should be doing for their teams. And so what I'm most interested in and most excited for going into this fall and sort of the next year of stuff is that sort of exponentially combined with the excitement that everyone is just feeling about being back in the world. So like when you take the concept of like, before it was fun, even when you were taking events for granted, and before the concept was great, if you were truly someone who was forward thinking and wanted to take care of your team. And now I think we're coming into this awesome sort of opportunity to bring a lot more of the employer community with us, to say, you need to be paying attention to this, it's fun to pay attention to this stuff. And oh, by the way, you're going to meet some really awesome people, and you're going to have a really fun time at, you know, the happy hour, or taking the yoga class, or whatever it is that we do at those particular events. So I'm really excited for those two things to sort of happen at the same time, you know, because it's kind of like a lunar eclipse. Like, I don't think we're going to get many of these opportunities where everybody's like, get me to a large convention. I'm ready to go. So I'm excited. I'm excited for that. The general energy at our events is like a ton of fun. And so that, plus just, you know, being back together again, as real humans, I think will be a pretty awesome experience.
Excellent. Once again, why don't you tell my team out there when and where they can find these events?
So you can find our events this year. They are packed a little close together this fall. Usually they are spread across the spring and the fall, but you can find the schedule for all of our events at perkscon.com. So it's like Perks Convention, but PerksCon. And you can find information about everything we do at poweredbyperks.com. Which has information about all of our brands. But our schedule starts, our first event is August 25th in the San Francisco area, which we are very excited. That's our first San Francisco event, so we're very excited.
Excellent.
You'd think it would have been our first event, but because San Francisco was like the birthplace of all of this, but we've been dragged there, and we're excited to launch our first event there on August 25th at City View at Metreon, and then we end in October with our last two shows are Chicago and Toronto.
Nice.
So. Yeah.
So, Alexa, thank you so much for coming on board. This sounds great. I have been hearing for the office with team bonding, hearing about the conventions, and very upset when I'm not the one who's picked to go and present. But I understand. But thank you so much for coming on board. But I hate to do this to you, because now it's time for my speed round.
Oh,
yeah.
Speed round. This show will leave no cheese unturned. Okay, guys, so the way this works is very simple. In 60 seconds, you as a team are going to try to answer as many easy questions as you can. The way it will work, because there are two of you, is if I ask a question that I do not name a specific person, whoever answers first, that's your answer. But if I name a specific person, it's up to that person to answer. You guys will have 60 seconds.
I'm really bad at trivia, just fair warning.
It's not a really trivia thing. It's more of a, hey, you'll see. But when the music starts, I'll start asking questions. So if you guys are ready, here we go.
Born ready.
All right. Saul, how many kids did you say you had?
2.
How many? Which one's your favorite?
2.
Ah, nice. Alexa.
The first one.
Alexa, if you had a movie made of your life, would you consider it a drama, comedy, romantic comedy, action, what?
Psychological thriller.
Awesome. And any of you, what would you like to do on a rainy day?
Look at my garden.
Good job, Saul.
Look at my garden. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Alexa, who is your favorite athlete?
Oh, Jesus. Mia Hamm.
I'll take it. All right. If, Saul, if you were guaranteed success in a different position, what would you want it to be?
Massage tester.
Well done, my friends. That is 6. 6 answers done in a minute. Well done. So once again, guys, thank you so much for coming on board. And thank you to all my team out there. That is going to wrap up yet another episode of Team Building Saves the World. If you are a fan, thank you. If you are a fan of this podcast, or you're just experiencing it now, please share it with your friends, your coworkers, your associates, whoever you may know. You find a stranger on the street and say, hey, I'm listening to this podcast. You should check it out. Let them know. You can find us on all the social medias at Team Bond Podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, where we have excerpts of each of these shows to be seen, so you can actually see the lovely people I get to talk to. If you go on the social medias, don't forget to leave us a comment so that I can read it in future episodes, because I want to hear what you guys think as you've been listening to this show. Once again, thanks to Saul, Lookner, and Alexa Baggio. Guys, again, great show. Thanks so much for coming on board.
Thanks for having us.
But that's going to be it. That's going to be it for me, my friends. Thank you so much, team. And never forget, from this point forward, you are always on my team, and I will forever be on yours. From all of us here to all of you, take care, team, and I'll see you next time.
It's been said that you learn more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. So why not put your coworkers to play with the help of the team at Team Bonding? Team Bonding was founded over 20 years ago with one simple question: how can employees have a great time while fostering strong, authentic bonds between people who work together? Their catalog of innovative events includes scavenger hunts, Jeopardy, and much more. Each activity, whether live, virtual, or hybrid, maximizes the impact of team building with an accent on fun. Visit teambonding.com to schedule your event now. Team Bonding, when you want seriously fun results.